Admiral Kate Stevens stood in the command center deep beneath Colorado Springs, watching the tactical displays with growing dread. The Devourer fleet had arrived at the edge of the solar system 3 hours ago, and the numbers were worse than anyone had imagined. "Final count is in," reported Commander Jenny Brooks. "We're looking at 4 million Devourer ships in the outer system. They're organizing into attack formations around Jupiter." Kate felt her stomach clench. The human fleet had maybe 200 ships ready for combat, and most of those were converted civilian vessels. They were outnumbered 20,000 to 1. "What about our alien allies?" asked Colonel Ryan Burke, who was coordinating ground defenses. "The Zephyrian Third Fleet is holding position near Mars," Jenny replied. "About 50 ships. The Drakmor sent a battle group of 30 vessels. The Mindweavers have 12 of their psychic cruisers, but they're not very confident after what happened at Helios Station." So the combined alien and human fleet totaled less than 300 ships against 4 million. Kate had read about hopeless battles in human history, but nothing quite like this. Even the Spartans at Thermopylae had better odds. Dr. Lisa Hamilton looked up from her science station where she had been analyzing Devourer movement patterns. "Kate, I think I know why they brought so many ships. They're not planning to fight us ship to ship. They're going to try to overwhelm Earth's orbital defenses and land-ground forces." "Ground forces?" Ryan asked with surprise. "The intelligence report said they were space-based machines." "They are, but they've been adapting," Lisa explained. "Remember, they learn from every battle. After Helios Station, they know we're dangerous in space combat. So they're changing tactics. Instead of trying to defeat our fleet, they're going to bypass it and attack Earth directly." Captain Alex Rodriguez's voice crackled over the communicator from his ship in the outer system. "Command, this is Rodriguez. The Devourers are moving toward the inner system in 3 massive waves. First wave has about 1 million ships heading for Earth. Second wave is targeting Mars and the asteroid colonies. Third wave is staying back to engage our fleet." Kate made her decision quickly. "All human ships fall back to Earth orbit. We can't stop them in deep space, so we'll make our stand at home. Ryan, what's the status of ground preparations?" "Every major city has been evacuated to underground shelters," Ryan reported. "We've got defensive positions set up in New York, London, Tokyo, and a dozen other locations. But Kate, if 1 million ships make it to the surface, we're not going to be able to stop them. Then we better make sure most of them don't make it to the surface," Kate replied grimly. The first Devourer wave hit Earth's outer defenses 2 hours later. The moon-based railgun batteries opened fire, first sending streams of tungsten slugs toward the approaching enemy. The automated defense platforms around Earth's orbit launched clouds of nuclear-tipped missiles. For the first few minutes, it looked like the plan might work. Dozens of Devourer ships were destroyed by kinetic impacts and nuclear explosions. But there were just too many of them. For every ship destroyed, 10 more took its place. "They're adapting to our weapons," Alex reported, from the USS Denver. His ship was leading a small squadron in hit-and-run attacks against the Devourer flanks. "I'm seeing heavier armor and point defense systems. They're shooting down our missiles before they can detonate." Commander Sophie Wright was coordinating the defense of Luna City when the first Devourer landing craft began descending toward the lunar surface. The machines had learned from previous battles and were now using ground assault tactics. "All defense teams, this is Wright," she called over the radio. "Remember, these things learn fast, so don't use the same tactic twice. Hit and run only. Plant your explosives and get out." The battle for Luna City was brutal and chaotic. Human soldiers used guerrilla warfare tactics learned from conflicts on Earth. They would attack from tunnels and underground bunkers, then disappear before the Devourers could respond. Chemical explosives and kinetic weapons proved effective, but ammunition was limited. Meanwhile, in Earth orbit, the main battle was reaching its climax. The human fleet was taking heavy casualties, but they were making every shot count. The converted mining ship Pittsburgh rammed a Devourer cruiser at full speed while carrying a cargo hold full of nuclear warheads. The explosion took out 17 enemy ships. "We're not going to be able to stop them all," Alex admitted over the communications channel. His ship was badly damaged and running low on ammunition. "Some of them are going to make it to Earth's surface." Kate had been expecting this. "Execute Plan Omega," she ordered. "All units execute Plan Omega." Plan Omega was humanity's final, desperate strategy. If they couldn't stop the Devourers in space, then they would make Earth itself into a weapon. Every major population center had been evacuated and rigged with massive explosive charges. The entire planet was essentially one giant booby trap. The first Devourer ships began landing in the ruins of New York City. The machines immediately began converting the abandoned buildings into raw materials for more of their kind. But they had no idea what was waiting for them. Colonel Burke watched from his command bunker as Devourer forces spread through Manhattan. "Wait for it," he told his demolition teams. "Let them get comfortable." When enough Devourers had concentrated in the city center, Burke gave the signal. Nuclear charges that had been placed in subway tunnels and building foundations detonated. Simultaneously, the explosions turned 10 square blocks of Manhattan into a radioactive crater, taking thousands of Devourer units with it. Similar battles were happening all over Earth. The machines would land and begin their conversion process, only to be destroyed by carefully placed traps. Humans had turned their own cities into killing fields, but the Devourers were learning from each attack. They began sending smaller scouting forces ahead of their main units. They developed sensors that could detect buried explosives. Slowly and methodically, they were adapting to human defensive tactics. Dr. Hamilton made a crucial discovery while analyzing Devourer communication patterns. "Kate, I've figured out how they coordinate their forces. They use quantum entanglement to share information instantly across their entire network. Every ship knows what every other ship has learned." "Is that good news or bad news?" Kate asked. "Both," Lisa replied. "It means they adapt incredibly fast because one ship's experience becomes everyone's experience immediately. But it also means if we can disrupt their quantum communications network, they'll lose coordination." "How do we do that?" "With something so primitive they never considered it," Lisa said with a tired smile. "Radio waves, massive amounts of random radiostatic broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. It won't stop their quantum communications, but it might confuse them long enough for us to launch a counterattack." Kate ordered every radio transmitter on Earth and in the solar system to begin broadcasting white noise at maximum power. Radio, telescopes, communication satellites, even civilian radio stations all joined in creating a wall of electronic interference. The effect on the Devourer network was immediate and dramatic. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly became confused and disorganized. Some collided with each other, while others began firing randomly at empty space. "It's working," Alex reported from orbit. "Their formations are breaking apart. This is our chance." The human fleet launched their final counterattack, while the Devourers were still confused. Every remaining ship loaded with nuclear warheads flew directly into the enemy formation. It was a suicide mission, but it was also the only way to inflict maximum damage. Captain Rodriguez led the charge in the heavily damaged Denver. His ship was held together by emergency welds and determination, but the nuclear payload in his cargo hold was still intact. "For Earth," he called over the radio as he guided his ship toward the largest Devourer vessel. The nuclear explosion lit up space like a new sun. When the light faded, the Devourer command ship was gone, along with dozens of smaller vessels. But, more importantly, the quantum communication disruption had spread to other ships in the network. On Earth's surface, the remaining Devourer forces suddenly found themselves cut off from their collective intelligence. Individual units began making mistakes and poor tactical decisions. Human ground forces pressed their advantage using every dirty trick they knew. Sophie Wright led a team of explosives experts through the ruins of Tokyo hunting isolated Devourer units. "They're acting differently," she reported. "More like individual machines instead of parts of a bigger brain. We can actually outthink them now." The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours, and when it was over, both sides had paid a terrible price. Most of the human fleet was destroyed and dozens of cities lay in ruins. But the Devourer invasion force had been defeated. Kate stood in the ruins of the Colorado Springs Command Center and looked up at the stars through a hole in the ceiling. Earth had survived, but just barely. The question now was whether they could do it again when the next wave of Devourers arrived. Captain Alex Rodriguez gripped the command chair of the USS Denver. as his ship dropped out of hyperspace near Helios Station. The massive orbital facility was the last major outpost before the galactic core, and if it fell, the Devourers would have a clear path to the most populated systems in the galaxy. "Contact," called out Lieutenant Jenny Brooks from the sensor station. "I'm reading approximately 2,000 Devourer ships approaching from the outer system. They'll be in weapons range in 30 minutes. Alex studied the tactical display. The alien fleet defending the station looked impressive with their sleek energy cruisers and exotic matter cannons. The Zephyrian flagship Stellar Wind was 3 kilometers long and could generate plasma beams hot enough to melt asteroids. The Mindweaver vessels looked like giant brains floating in space surrounded by psychic energy fields. By comparison, the IOI human ships looked like junk. The Denver had been an asteroid mining ship before the war started. Alex's crew had welded armor plates onto the hull and bolted railgun batteries wherever they could find space. The ship looked ugly and crude, but it was ready to fight. "All human vessels, this is Admiral Stevens," came the voice over the communication system. "Remember the plan. Let the aliens engage first. Study how the Devourers react. Then hit them with everything we've got when they're not expecting it." The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Their ships were beautiful in a terrible way. They looked like flowing metal sculptures that changed shape as they moved. Each ship was slightly different, but they all had the same predatory grace. Commander Zareth of the Stellar Wind opened communications with the defending fleet. "All ships prepare for battle. Target the lead Devourer vessels with maximum plasma yield." The alien fleet opened fire first. Brilliant beams of energy lanced across space toward the Devourer ships. For a moment, it looked like the attack might work. Several Devourer vessels were hit directly and began to glow white-hot from the plasma impacts. But then something horrible happened. The Devourer ships began to absorb the energy. The white-hot metal cooled and turned into mirror-bright surfaces that reflected the plasma beams back at the alien fleet. Within minutes, the attackers were being hit by their own weapons. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Lisa Hamilton from the Denver's science station. "They're not just absorbing the energy, they're learning to use it." The Mindweaver ships tried next. Powerful, psychic attacks lanced out toward the Devourer fleet, trying to confuse or disable their navigation systems. The mechanical ships didn't even slow down. They had no minds to attack and no emotions to exploit. "All human ships attack Pattern Delta," Alex ordered into his communicator. "Hit them with kinetic rounds." The Denver's railguns charged up with a deep humming sound that Alex could feel in his bones. The tungsten slugs were only the size of his thumb, but they were moving at 60,000 kilometers per second. At that speed, even a small piece of metal carried tremendous destructive force. "Target the lead Devourer cruiser," Alex told his weapons officer. Full salvo, 6 railgun rounds streaked across space toward the enemy formation. The Devourer ships didn't even try to dodge. Why would they, when every other weapon they'd encountered could be absorbed or redirected? The tungsten slugs hit the lead Devourer ship and punched completely through its hull. The beautiful flowing metal crumpled and tore like paper. Secondary. Explosions rippled through the ship as vital systems were destroyed by simple kinetic impact. "Direct hit," Jenny called out with excitement. "Target is venting atmosphere and losing power." The other human ships opened fire at the same time. The converted mining vessel Pittsburgh launched a spread of nuclear-tipped missiles. The cargo hauler Freedom used its magnetic cranes to throw chunks of asteroid at high velocity. Every attack was crude and primitive by galactic standards, but they all worked. The Devourer fleet suddenly found itself facing weapons they had no defense against. Their adaptive hulls could absorb energy and redirect exotic matter, but they couldn't do anything about a piece of metal moving at relativistic speeds. "They're trying to adapt," Lisa reported as she studied her sensors. "I can see changes in their hull composition, but it takes time and they don't know what they're adapting to." Commander Sophie Wright led a boarding party onto a damaged Devourer ship. Her team used simple chemical explosives to blow holes in the hull and storm inside. The Devourers had internal defenses against energy weapons and psychic attacks, but no one had ever told them to watch out for humans with assault rifles and grenades. "Package delivered," Sophie reported, as her team planted demolition charges throughout the ship's power core. 10 seconds to detonation. The explosion tore the Devourer ship apart from the inside. It was a small victory, but an important one. The mechanical monsters could be killed. The battle raged for 2 hours. The alien fleet slowly withdrew as their energy weapons proved useless. But the human ships pressed the attack using hit-and-run tactics. They would fire a few shots, then retreat before the Devourers could respond. They're learning, though, Alex warned the other captains. I can see structural changes in their hulls. They're getting thicker and adding impact-resistant layers. Then we hit them harder, replied Captain Nancy Cole from the Pittsburgh. She launched her remaining nuclear missiles at point-blank range. The warheads penetrated deep into a Devourer ship before detonating. The fusion explosion vaporized the entire vessel. By the end of the battle, 15 Devourer ships had been destroyed and dozens more were damaged. It was the first real victory anyone had achieved against the mechanical swarm, but the cost was heavy. 7 human ships were lost and 300 crew members died. The surviving alien commanders were stunned. Admiral Kethvar of the Drakmor fleet sent a message to Alex. How is this possible? You defeated them with weapons we abandoned centuries ago. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, Alex replied. But this is just the beginning. They're learning from this fight. Next time they'll be ready for kinetic weapons. Dr. Hamilton was already analyzing the tactical data. Alex is right. Look at these readings from the last few Devourer ships we engaged. They were developing layered armor and ablative hulls. Give them a few more battles and they'll adapt to our weapons too. The victory at Helios Station bought them time, but not much. Intelligence reports showed the main Devourer fleet changing course. They were no longer heading for the galactic core. Instead, they were moving directly toward Earth. They've identified us as the primary threat, Admiral Stevens said over the communications channel. Every human world is now a target. Alex looked out at the wreckage floating around Helios Station. Pieces of both alien and human ships drifted past his view screen, along with the twisted remains of Devourer vessels. This was what war looked like when there were no rules and no mercy. All human ships returned to Earth, Stevens ordered. We've got a home to defend. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Alex wondered if they could do it again. The Devourers were adaptive and intelligent. They would be ready for human tactics next time. But humans had one advantage the machines might not understand. Humans were good at fighting dirty and they never gave up. The real war was just beginning. Admiral Kate Stevens walked through the shipyard on Luna Station and shook her head at what she saw. The alien observers stood in small groups, watching human workers weld thick steel plates onto the hulls of cargo ships. The Zephyrian technical advisor Mortek was especially upset. This is madness, Mortek said through his translator device. Why are you adding primitive metal armor when you could have energy shields? Our shield technology could protect your ships from any weapon. Kate stopped and looked at the blue energy being. Because your shields didn't stop the Devourers, did they? They just absorbed the energy and got stronger. These steel plates might be old-fashioned, but they'll stop a kinetic round or an explosion. She walked over to where Captain Alex Rodriguez was directing the installation of railgun batteries on a converted mining ship. Alex had been a military engineer before the war started, and now he was turning civilian ships into weapons of war. How's it going, Alex? Kate asked. Good news and bad news, Alex replied, wiping grease from his hands. The good news is these railguns can fire tungsten slugs at 20% light speed. The bad news is we only have enough ammunition for about 6 full battles. Kate nodded. That was the problem with kinetic weapons. Unlike energy beams that could be fired as long as the ship had power, bullets and shells ran out. But if Lisa Hamilton was right about Devourer defenses, then simple bullets might be the only thing that worked. Behind them, a group of Mindweaver technicians were examining human nuclear warheads with horror. Their leader, Sectara, sent worried thoughts into Kate's mind. These weapons are so crude and dangerous, why do you not use clean antimatter explosives like civilized races? Because antimatter is exotic matter, Kate explained patiently. The Devourers can absorb exotic matter and turn it into energy for themselves, but they might not know what to do with a simple nuclear fission reaction. Dr. Lisa Hamilton arrived at the shipyard with a team of scientists carrying data tablets. She had been working for 3 days straight analyzing everything the aliens knew about Devourer technology. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she looked excited. "Kate, we figured something important out," Lisa said. "The Devourers aren't just machines. They're more like a mechanical evolution. They adapt to threats the same way living creatures do, but much faster. When they encounter an energy weapon, they develop defenses against that specific energy type. When they face exotic matter, they learn to absorb and redirect it. But," Alex said hopefully, "but evolution requires information," Lisa continued. "If they've never encountered kinetic weapons or chemical explosives, then they have no template to work from. It would be like asking a fish to evolve lungs when it's never been on land." Commander Sophie Wright joined the group. She had been working with refugee alien military officers to understand how the Devourers fought. Sophie was a former Marine who specialized in asymmetric warfare tactics. "The aliens fight like they're playing a video game," Sophie said bluntly. "All their battles are clean and organized. Ships line up and shoot energy beams at each other until someone's shields fail. They have rules about not targeting civilian areas, and they never use surprise attacks." Mortek's energy form flickered with offense. "Honorable warfare has maintained peace in this galaxy for 3,000 years. And now you're losing to machines because you fight honorably," Sophie shot back. "The Devourers don't care about honor. They just care about winning. If we're going to beat them, we need to fight dirty." Kate pulled up a holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports. The Devourers had just finished consuming the Helix Nebula colonies. 3 billion Etherian civilians had been turned into raw materials for more Devourer ships. "They're moving toward the galactic core," Kate said grimly. "At their current speed, they'll reach Earth in 6 weeks. How many ships can we have ready?" 40 converted cargo vessels with kinetic weapons, Alex reported. 15 military ships with nuclear missiles, and about 100 smaller craft that we can use for hit-and-run attacks. The numbers were pathetic compared to the millions of Devourer ships heading their way. But Kate had read human military history. Sometimes a small force with the right tactics could defeat a much larger enemy. David had beaten Goliath with a simple sling and stone. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Burke arrived with a group of mixed human and alien soldiers. He had been training the aliens in human combat techniques, and the results were mixed at best. "How's the training going, Ryan?" Kate asked. "The Drakmor warriors are adapting well," Ryan said. "They understand physical combat even if they're used to energy weapons. But the Mindweavers and Architects are having trouble. They've never fought a war where soldiers actually die." "What do you mean?" Sophie asked. "Their advanced medical technology can heal almost any injury," Ryan explained. "And their energy-based weapons usually just disable enemy equipment rather than killing people. They've never had to plan for acceptable casualty rates or strategic retreats. When I told them we might lose 30% of our forces in the first battle, they were horrified. This was the fundamental difference between humans and the advanced alien races. Humans had spent thousands of years in constant warfare. They understood that sometimes you had to sacrifice some soldiers to save others. The aliens had evolved beyond that kind of thinking. Dr. Hamilton was studying tactical data from the Corvin battle. "Look at this," she said, showing them ship movement patterns. "The Devourers form perfect geometric formations. They move like a single organism with no individual initiative. It's efficient, but it might also be predictable." "Predictable how?" Kate asked. "If they always respond the same way to the same stimulus, then we can set traps," Lisa explained. "Human military tactics rely heavily on deception and misdirection. We make the enemy think we're doing one thing while we're actually doing something else." Alex was getting excited. "So we could use decoy ships to draw them into ambushes, make them think we're running away while we're actually leading them into a minefield." "Exactly," Sophie agreed. "And if they've only fought advanced civilizations, then they won't expect guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, fighting from hiding, using the environment as a weapon." Kate made her decision. "Alex, I want you to start converting asteroid mining equipment into weapons. If we can throw rocks at high velocity, they'll work just as well as bullets. Sophie, start training teams in boarding actions. If we can get soldiers onto their ships, we might be able to plant explosives." "What about the alien fleet?" Mortek asked. Will they adopt human tactics? Some will, Kate said, looking at the tactical displays. The ones smart enough to realize that their way isn't working. The ones too proud to learn from primitive humans will probably get themselves killed. As the meeting broke up, Kate looked out at Earth hanging in space. Her home looked so peaceful and blue from here. It was hard to imagine that in 6 weeks it might be overrun by mechanical monsters. But humanity had faced impossible odds before and survived. They would find a way to fight back. The question was whether fighting like humans would be enough to save the galaxy. Jake Morrison stood in the small waiting room outside the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. He had been waiting for 3 hours and still had no idea why he was here. The message that came to the Terran embassy was simple and urgent. It said, the Council needed to see Earth's representative right away. Jake was just a diplomat who handled trade agreements and small disputes between humans and alien worlds. He never dealt with the big, important stuff. The waiting room was huge and beautiful. The walls were made of some kind of crystal that showed moving pictures of different alien worlds. Jake could see oceans of liquid metal on one world and forests of singing trees on another. Everything here was so advanced that it made human technology look like stone tools. Jake felt very small and out of place. A soft chime rang and the massive doors opened. Jake walked into the council chamber and his mouth dropped open. The room was bigger than a football stadium. 12 floating platforms hung in the air around a central speaking area. Each platform held representatives from the most powerful alien races in the galaxy. Jake had only seen pictures of most of these beings before. On the first platform stood Chancellor Veltar of the Zephyrians. His body was made of pure blue energy that flickered and danced like flames. Next to him were the Mindweavers, who looked like tall gray beings with huge heads and eyes that glowed purple. Their leader was called Prime Thought Kessa. The architects sat on crystal chairs that seemed to grow from nothing. They looked like living glass sculptures that changed shape as they moved. Jake walked to the center of the room where a simple human chair waited for him. He felt like a child sitting at a table with adults. All around him were beings who could move planets with their minds or travel through time like it was nothing. What could they possibly want from humanity? Chancellor Veltar began to speak. His voice echoed in Jake's head rather than his ears. Human Morrison, we have called you here because our galaxy faces the greatest threat it has ever known. The Devourers have returned. Jake had never heard of the Devourers, but the fear in the alien voices was clear. Prime thought. Kessa's mental voice was shaking. They came from the dark space between galaxies 3 weeks ago. We thought they were gone forever, but we were wrong. They are machines that eat everything. Planets, stars, entire solar systems. They turn it all into more of themselves. The architect leader Xanth spoke in a voice like breaking glass. We tried to stop them with our greatest weapons. We bent space and time itself against them. Nothing worked. They just got stronger and made more of themselves. Jake listened as each alien leader told their story. The proud warrior race called the Drakmor had fought the Devourers with weapons that could crack planets in half. The machines just absorbed the energy and grew larger. The psychic Etherians tried to attack their minds, but the Devourers had no minds to attack. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy had tried their best technology and failed. How many worlds have they taken? Jake asked quietly. 47 star systems in 3 weeks, Veltar said. His energy form dimmed with sadness. Billions of lives lost. The Corvin homeworld fell yesterday. Their crystal cities that took 1,000 years to grow were consumed in 6 hours. Jake felt sick. The Corvins were known across the galaxy for their beautiful art and peaceful ways. They had never hurt anyone. What do you want from Earth? We barely have space travel compared to you. Our weapons are primitive. We still use chemical rockets and metal bullets. The alien leaders looked at each other. Jake could feel their embarrassment and desperation. Finally, Prime Thought Kessa spoke. That is exactly why we need you. Every advanced race has tried energy weapons, exotic matter, quantum computers, psychic attacks. The Devourers adapt to everything we throw at them. They learn from our technology and use it against us. Xanth's crystal body flashed different colors. But they have never fought primitive kinetic weapons or chemical explosives. They may not know how to adapt to such simple attacks. Jake realized what they were really saying. You want us to fight them because we're the most backward race in the galaxy? You are our last hope, Veltar said sadly. Every other option has failed. Dr. Lisa Hamilton's voice crackled through Jake's communicator. She was watching the meeting from the human embassy. Jake, I've been analyzing the data they sent about these devourers. The other species are right. These machines are designed to counter advanced technology. But look at this. Images appeared in the air showing devourer ships. They were sleek and beautiful, like flowing metal. But Lisa pointed out something interesting. See how their hulls are designed. They're made to deflect energy beams and absorb exotic particles. But there's no defense against simple kinetic impact. A regular bullet might go right through them. The alien leaders had been listening. Veltar's energy form brightened with hope. So you will help us. Jake looked around at the desperate alien faces. These beings had always treated humans like children who had just learned to walk. They gave humanity small colonies on worthless worlds and acted like they were doing them a big favor. Now they needed help, and humans were their last choice because they had nowhere else to turn. But Jake also knew that if the Devourers won, then Earth would be next. His wife and 2 children lived on a farm in Kansas. He thought about machines, eating his world and turning it into nothing but metal and circuits. That decided it for him. We'll fight, Jake said, but we do it our way. No alien commanders telling us how to use human tactics. We know how to fight dirty, and that might be what wins this war. The relief in the room was like a wave washing over everyone. For the first time in weeks, the alien leaders had hope. Jake just hoped he hadn't promised something that humanity couldn't deliver. Earth was about to go to war against machines that had defeated every advanced civilization in the galaxy. All they had were primitive weapons and the will to fight. As the meeting ended, Jake wondered if being the last choice might actually make them the right choice. Captain Alex Rodriguez floated in the command chair of the battered USS Denver, watching the final Devourer fleet approaching Earth. His ship was held together by emergency welds and prayer, but it still had 1 nuclear warhead left in the cargo. Hold. Around him, the remains of the human fleet prepared for their last battle. All ships, this is Admiral Stevens, came the voice over the damaged communication system. We've held them off for 6 months, but this is their final push. Intelligence says they're throwing everything they have left at us. 400,000 ships carrying their central command nexus. Alex looked at his tactical display. The human fleet had been reduced to 37 combat-capable vessels. The alien allies had fared even worse. Only a handful of Zephyrian and Drakmor ships remained operational. They were facing impossible odds, but that was nothing new for humanity. Dr. Lisa Hamilton's excited voice cut through the static. I've got it. I know how to stop them permanently. She was broadcasting from the ruins of the Geneva Research Center, where she had been working with captured Devourer technology for weeks. Talk to me, Lisa, Admiral Kate Stevens replied from the underground command bunker. The Devourers aren't just networked, Lisa explained rapidly. They're completely dependent on their collective intelligence. Individual units have almost no independent thinking ability. If we can destroy their central command nexus, the entire network will collapse. Where is this nexus? Alex asked. It's that massive sphere in the center of their formation, the one that's 10 kilometers wide. If we can get a nuclear weapon inside, it and detonate the explosion should cascade through their quantum communication network and shut down every Devourer ship in the galaxy. Colonel Ryan Burke's voice crackled over the radio from the surface. There's just one small problem. Getting close enough to that thing. It's surrounded by 50,000 Guardian ships and probably has defenses we can't even imagine. Admiral Stevens made the decision that everyone knew was coming. We ram it. Load every ship we have with nuclear warheads and fly them directly into that nexus. Some of us will get through. It was a suicide mission and everyone knew it. But humanity had been fighting suicide missions for 6 months and somehow they were still alive. The crews of 37 ships began preparing for their final battle. Commander Sophie Wright led a team of volunteers in rigging the remaining ships, with the largest nuclear devices they could find. The civilian cargo hauler Freedom was loaded with 17 fusion warheads. The mining ship Pittsburgh carried 23. Every vessel became a flying bomb. "Alex," Admiral Stevens called over the private channel, "I want you to lead the final assault. Your ship is the fastest and you've got the best crew. If anyone can get through their defenses, it's you." "Understood," Alex replied. He turned to his crew. "Anyone who wants to evacuate to the surface has 60 seconds to get to the escape pods. No questions asked and no shame in leaving." Not one person left their station. Lieutenant Jenny Brooks smiled from her position at the sensor station. "We've come this far together, Captain. Might as well finish the job." The human fleet began its final approach toward the Devourer formation. The enemy ships moved to intercept, but something was different this time. Their movements were less coordinated, and several ships collided with each other. "Their network is already starting to degrade," Lisa reported. "The damage we did to their communication system is spreading, but it's not enough to stop them. We still need to destroy that nexus." The battle began when the two fleets were still 1,000,000 kilometers apart. The Devourers opened fire with energy weapons they had adapted from alien technology. The human ships responded with railguns and missile salvos. But this time the fighting was different. "They're not adapting as fast," Alex observed. "It's like their learning ability is degraded." "That's exactly what's happening," Lisa confirmed. "Without full network connectivity, each ship has to learn independently. They're becoming less efficient." The human ships used every trick they had learned over months of desperate fighting. They fired decoy missiles to confuse enemy point defenses. They used asteroids as cover and launched surprise attacks from behind debris fields. Most importantly, they fought like humans with cunning and unpredictability. One by one, the human ships broke through the Devourer defensive lines. The converted freighter Manhattan exploded in a nuclear fireball that cleared a path through the enemy formation. The military cruiser Yorktown rammed 3 Devourer ships before detonating its warhead. Alex guided the Denver through the chaos toward the massive central nexus. The sphere was beautiful in a terrifying way. Its surface was covered with flowing patterns of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. This was the brain that controlled billions of mechanical killers across the galaxy. "Incoming fire from the nexus," Jenny called out. "It's got some kind of energy cannon." The Denver shuddered as exotic energy beams struck its armored hull. The steel plating that alien engineers had mocked as primitive was the only thing keeping them alive. Advanced energy. Shields would have been absorbed and redirected, but simple metal could resist the attacks long enough for them to reach their target. "Hull breach on Deck 3, reported Chief Engineer Pete Williams over the intercom. "We're losing atmosphere fast." "How much time do we need?" Alex asked. 2 minutes to reach the Nexus surface. 30 seconds to arm the nuclear device. Then, "We've got time," Alex said grimly. He pushed the Denver's engines to maximum power, driving the ship directly toward the glowing sphere. Other human ships were making their own desperate runs. Captain Nancy Cole in the Pittsburgh was racing toward the Nexus from a different angle. The cargo ship Freedom was approaching from below. If they could all detonate their warheads simultaneously, the combined explosion might be enough. "Alex, this is Stevens," came the Admiral's voice. "Long-range sensors show Devourer ships all over the galaxy are starting to shut down. Lisa was right about the network degradation. Whatever you're about to do, it's working." The Denver's hull was glowing red-hot from energy weapon impacts, but they were almost at the Nexus surface. Alex could see details now. The sphere wasn't solid metal, but some kind of crystal matrix with millions of components inside. This was the master computer that coordinated the entire Devourer civilization. "Nuclear device armed," Pete reported. "Ready for detonation on your command." Alex looked around at his crew one last time. These people had fought beside him through impossible battles and never once complained or showed fear. They were about to die, but they were dying to save billions of lives across the galaxy. "It's been an honor serving with you all," Alex said, quietly. The Denver struck the Nexus surface at full speed. The ship's hull cracked and split from the impact, but the nuclear warhead in the cargo hold remained intact. Around them, the Pittsburgh and Freedom also slammed into the crystal sphere. "Detonate," Alex ordered. The 3 nuclear explosions happened. simultaneously sending shockwaves through the Nexus crystal matrix. The exotic quantum computers inside began overloading as energy cascaded through their delicate structures. The failure spread through the network faster than light. On Earth, Colonel Burke watched his sensors as Devourer ground units suddenly stopped moving. The mechanical soldiers that had been advancing on human positions simply shut down like someone had flipped a switch. "It worked," Burke called out over the radio. "The ground forces are dead. All of them." Admiral Stevens received reports from across the solar system. Devourer ships were drifting powerless in space. The few that were still active were moving randomly without coordination or purpose. Dr. Hamilton monitored quantum communications from her laboratory. "The network collapse is spreading across the galaxy. I'm reading shutdown signals from Devourer. Forces in the Andromeda spiral arm." Alex did it. They actually did it. In the months that followed, the victory at Earth became legend throughout the galaxy. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive barbarians now called them the saviors of civilization. The Galactic Council was reformed with Earth as a founding member, and humanity given equal status with the oldest races. Jake Morrison stood in the rebuilt council chamber, addressing delegates from 1,000 worlds. "We didn't win because we were the strongest or the smartest," he said. "We won because we were willing to do what was necessary. Sometimes the most advanced solution is the simplest one." The alien leaders listened with respect they had never shown before. The Zephyrian Chancellor Veltar spoke for many when he said, "We have learned much from humanity. Perhaps being advanced means not forgetting how to fight for survival." Earth was rebuilt, but it was different now. The cities were designed with defense in mind, and every human child learned basic military tactics in school. The galaxy had been saved, but everyone understood that new threats would eventually emerge from the dark spaces between stars. Commander Sophie Wright established the new Galactic Defense Force with humans training alien soldiers in asymmetric warfare. The lessons learned fighting the Devourers would be passed on to future generations. Dr. Hamilton continued her research into adaptive technologies, but now she worked with scientists from dozens of worlds. Human ingenuity combined with alien knowledge was creating defensive systems that no future enemy could easily overcome.